How do you gut someone?
Always trust my gut.
Hello and welcome to Gutted. I'm Aleece.
And I'm Tony, and this is the podcast where we spill our guts about horror movies. And this is our pilot episode. So we're going to keep it a little short and, hopefully around 30, 40 minutes or so.
Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe it'll go long. Who knows? But we want to start off with why we're starting a podcast, a little bit about ourselves, and why we love this genre of horror.
Yeah. Well, I'm Aleece, as I said. And I love the horror genre because of, obviously it's exciting. So all of those elements that everybody knows that horror can bring to a movie and to an experience, a viewing experience, are there. It's obviously exciting, it's thrilling, it's gripping, and you are literally on the edge of your seat sometimes. But I love it for so much more than that. It's often underrated as a genre, I feel like. So I think because of that, that being overlooked so often, those who are making films in the horror genre are able to say so much more because no one's watching. And those are the films where I find if there's something to be said in whatever political statement you want to say for that time in which that movie was made, you can often hide it under the lens of a horror film. That's why I love horror so much. It can say so much, and it often goes under the radar.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And I really love horror films just because of they're sort of the most outlandish, campy. It's almost like the type of movie where anything goes. It's a movie genre that has a lot of creativity and a lot of flexibility for the filmmakers, for the storytellers.
For the actors.
For a
lot of the people involved.
For the people making the film, it is, usually you can make a horror movie for a really low budget.
And
so there's freedom.
Right, there is freedom.
I like.
Actors often do horror films first. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about, where it's like you have a lot of freedom because it's your first time. So why not experiment, play around with it? And so a lot of those first-timer horror films or those low-budget early horror films of, look where they are now, kind of, directors, actors, filmmakers.
Yeah, it's feel good. It's
they are feel good. You wouldn't think that they'd be feel good, but they are.
They're very feel good. It's like
if for nothing else, you just feel good that it's not you in that situation. So.
Yeah. So some horror movies are terrifying, and some horror movies are not so terrifying. And they're campy, they're cheesy.
Yeah, and they're a form of escapism.
It's almost a comedy.
Sometimes they are comedies, not always. So we obviously love watching them, but we also love talking about them.
Yeah, and so we wanted to start this podcast because, I personally felt like I was watching so many horror movies and then forgetting them. So, there's so many that I've seen since I was a teenager. And I really have this deep love for them. But then if you ask me something about maybe other than basic plot, I'd be like, oh yeah, I've seen that, but I can't exactly remember. So I think this is another way to kind of dive deeper into these movies that I really cherish and really love.
Well, because if we're just watching them and not discussing them afterwards, they kind of just float off into the ether and we forget about them. But
especially these days when you have an infinite amount of choices, and you watch something and then it's gone the next day. And sometimes actually that happens quite often. Well, I'll watch a movie and within 2 days I've forgotten everything about that movie.
Yeah, so
Aleece is a little bit better at that. She can remember the actors' names, the plot, how she felt about it.
Well,
all
that's
that
kind of
stuff.
why we wanted to start this, because we love watching them, and we like to discuss them to kind of further inculcate that movie into your brain
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, so it's community building as well.
Yeah.
So when we're able to discuss, hopefully in the future we'll be able to have some guests on, and we're still kind of in the COVID era, so we'll see how
So
that
of course
goes.
we're starting a podcast. That's what you do in the COVID.
But we're starting
era.
a podcast way after the COVID
I
quarantine.
know.
I think a lot of people started podcasts during the
Yeah, it's
actual quarantine.
2021. We're kind of late in the game.
Yeah, we're a little late to the game.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Better late than never. Anyway, so we are starting this because we like talking about them, obviously, and it's kind of like a form of a visual book club, but
Yeah, we call it
a
a
boo
boo
club.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good segue into a little bit about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We are a married couple, which is why you just witnessed that moment of the boo
Oh,
club.
yes. We're so in sync.
Yes, we're very in sync. And this is kind of like what we do anyways, so we're, yeah, I mean, I
So
think I already covered that.
why not film it
Why not film it? Why not film a little bit into
of us
our-
discussing horror films and
watching horror films,
dissecting horror films,
yes.
which brings us to our show's title.
Yes,
Of
gutted.
gutted.
Yes.
And gutted can have so many meanings, especially in the horror genre.
Yes, we thought long and hard about the title of our
did.
podcast, throwing out different names. Some of them didn't make the cut. Some of them were
Some of them
out
were
in left
gutted.
field.
Thrown away.
Yeah. We ended up on gutted, and we both when I think when it came up, it just kind of clicked, and we're just like, yeah, that's. I think
Yeah,
that's,
and
yeah,
I'm a
that's what
big
it's gonna
fan
be.
of
Yes.
figurative language and idioms, and what's
Yes.
more figurative language than picturing something being gutted, which is very apt to the horror genre. You have your allusion to the slasher subgenre of horror, of people being gutted, like poor Casey and Steve in the opening scene in Scream.
Poor Casey.
Poor
Steve.
Casey and Steve, they're gutted. Sorry if we spoiled anything for anyone who has not seen Scream yet.
This podcast will have a lot
Many
of spoilers.
So just be forewarned.
We actually didn't mention too much about ourselves.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're married.
We are married. But also one of the reasons I think why we even became a couple in the first place was largely in part due to horror films. We met in college, our first year in college and undergrad, and we first noticed each other over our mutual love for Evil Dead 2.
That's true.
Yeah, Tony came into my dorm room and he's like, "Oh, nice DVD collection," because I had quite a good DVD collection. And he
did.
saw Evil Dead 2. And I was like, "Oh, you've seen that? Who's this boy?"
Yes, so we are 100% bound by the
Evil Dead
horror
2.
genre. And Evil Dead
Oh, yeah.
2, yeah. I was actually, prodding you to just say more about yourself.
Oh, psh, no.
So I can say something about myself.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna just say that we're not film historians, we're not film critics, we're fans. I would say that I'm not a super fan. I have a deep love for the genre.
What do you define as super fan? Because I kind of feel like I am a super fan.
I feel like a super fan is someone who, it's almost like every waking moment, every ounce of their energy, all of their love is poured into the genre. And
That's a tall order.
I guess I'm just like going way to the top. But someone
That's like
who's
film historian
a collector,
level.
someone who's a historian, someone who is
Okay, fine. So we don't have formal training in the horror genre, but I would say that by informal means that we are super fans.
Okay, I'll take it back.
Okay,
I
thank you.
would say I'm a super fan.
Jeez, who are you? After we just said how much we're in sync. Well, I want to keep going with.
Yeah, let's talk about kind of what we're going to get into in this.
No, I want to keep going with like why horror films have kind of been so strong and prevalent in our relationships. We
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
talked about like, how we are kind of drawn to them individually, but I mean, as a couple, they have had this thread throughout our relationship,
That
and
is true, yes.
starting with Evil Dead 2, and then
Starting with Evil Dead
going
2.
on to our first date, which was watching Dead Alive with different friends. And so it wasn't, our first solo date, but our first date amongst friends. We were watching Dead Alive in
Yes. Peter Jackson's
Tony's
Dead Alive.
dorm room.
Yes.
And then our first discussion of becoming an official couple, which is a very important discussion that you have in the buddingness of a relationship. That was when we were returning Rosemary's Baby to Blockbuster.
Yes, this was a time when Blockbuster still was a thing.
How I pine for Blockbuster.
And as a young couple, that was kind of one of the things we like to do, is go walk down to Blockbuster.
Really just an excuse to like take a walk with someone and see what are they going to pick out.
Yeah.
And
Aleece was not impressed by my collection of really low resolution pirated horror movies.
don't admit that.
I hope that I'm not going to be persecuted for that. But I do remember watching like Friday the 13th Part 3 or something like that, and I just remember the film quality is pretty bad.
I'll have our fans know that I did not partake in this pirating heyday of the early 2000s.
Yeah, okay, early 2000s.
It was early
Young college,
2000s.
so you
Young
could probably
college.
Put together
Prefrontal lobe
Yeah.
formation.
You
So
could put together our age range as well.
moving on.
Moving on.
And okay, I feel like this was important. Our first dance at our wedding was to,
Goodbye Horses by Q Lazarus.
which was made
From-
famous by Silence of the Lambs, and it was that really
Not by
amazing.
Jay and Silent Bob.
No.
Movie.
They parodied this moment, but
Yeah.
Buffalo Bill's very captivating dance in Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
And that became our first dance. And
We didn't quite recreate the
No.
Buffalo Bill-esque.
It was much more
essence.
experimental.
It was very experimental.
Lots
It was
of rolling
it was
around.
off the cuff, as we like to say, off the cuff.
Tony
And
likes to say
I
that.
ruined my wedding suit doing the dance, so it was quite
No
experimental.
one re-wears that stuff anyway.
Yeah. And I imagine that, we don't have any kids right now, but I imagine when we do have kids, there will be some John Carpenter soundtracks playing at the birthing process.
Yeah, like in the hospital,
Yeah.
surround sound speaker system.
Yeah.
We'll make that happen. Okay. Continuing to move on to the main purpose of this pilot podcast, to discuss our top 10 horror films, each of our top 10.
Yeah.
And since we are married, we do have a couple repeats.
Yeah. Well, and I think, before we get into that, I do want to mention two of the types of episodes that we're going to do.
Right. We have a Spill Your Guts type of
Yes.
episode.
So Spill Your Guts episodes will be more of a in-depth look, kind of just a reaction to the film. We do some light research on the film, and then
And a critique of various elements of that film.
yeah. So not quite a review.
But just our we're just spilling our guts about that particular film,
Just get
what
the
we
conversation
enjoyed,
going. Yeah.
what our thoughts were. Yeah, conversation. And then the other type of episode we're thinking of doing is called the gut reaction. Actually, it's like a two-parter, like a gut feeling, and then followed up by a gut reaction, all within the same episode.
Yeah, and so this type of episode is going to be where we watch exactly one half of a movie, and then pause it, and then we'll record half of the podcast, and then
Discuss our feelings about the movie thus far up to that halfway marker.
make some predictions about the
Make
movie.
some predictions about who might get gutted, or
What's going to happen? What's the twist ending? Who's
Yeah.
going to die? Are
Yeah.
we going to lose interest in the next 10 minutes?
Oh, hopefully not. And then we will watch the rest of the film and
Yeah.
come back with our conclusions. So whether or not we were right, if either of our predictions were right, and then our gut reactions about the rest of the film.
I'm also imagining that as we build this podcast, we will start to kind of build a community, and we can invite some other people from that community onto the show and hear maybe some expert opinions, maybe some firsthand experiences from people who have actually made these movies. You never know.
You
it out
never
there.
know.
You never know.
Putting
Or
out
it could
there.
just be Aleece and I
Forever
talking about.
with Tom.
Oh yeah,
Eyeball Tom.
we didn't really mention that, but there's someone peeping in. We'll call it the nosy neighbor
Tom.
peeping in.
I named him Tom.
Well,
10 minutes ago.
it's peeping.
I think it's clever because he's peeping and his name's Tom.
All right, fine. We have peeping
Thank
Tom in
you.
the background. So Tom's gonna be with us as our special guest as always.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And now, can we get into the bulk of the podcast?
Yeah, let's
Our
get in.
top
Let's
10?
get into the meat of this.
Okay.
Let's stop dilly dallying around. I know it's mostly me.
No, you have a lot of gut feelings. Lots of feelings that you want to spill.
Yeah, I do.
So, makes sense.
I do.
Number 10. So my number 10 perfect horror movie is Rear Window, directed by Alfred Hitchcock in 1954. And I know by some standards, this is not a horror film. It is more in that thriller mystery genre.
Maybe suspense.
Right, maybe suspense. It predates Psycho, which is his, more known horror film. It has that music and that famous, slasher bathroom scene with the blood circling the drain and Janet Leigh getting offed in like the first few minutes. So that one is very obviously a horror film. And so things before, it's more kind of like, murky waters. But I feel like Rear Window is a horror film because if you think about the definition of what is horror, what is horrifying, something that terrifies you. And I feel like it's absolutely terrifying to be in Jimmy Stewart's character's position, immobilized and helpless, looking out that window of, the rear window of his apartment complex. And kind of, it starts out innocently enough, as most horror films do, just kind of, innocuously spying on his neighbors and very, voyeuristically. And then his eyes stumble upon something that he didn't expect. And it's even more horrifying when somebody he cares about, Grace Kelly's character at the end, is in that horrifying situation. And again, he's helpless and cannot do anything to help her. And aside from that, from my own argument that it is a horror film, or in that genre anyway.
Has someone told you that it's not a horror film?
I
feel like you're defending it
I
before it
am
needs to be defended.
defending it because I feel like it's not known for being a horror film because it is in that, that genre of thriller, suspense, mystery. So I just wanted to, argue that it belongs in that genre, in that section of blockbuster, if you happened to be able to go.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when there is a director who is well known or maybe critically acclaimed or something, then sometimes their movies are not considered horror.
Well, the movies prior to their, their salient moment of horror, like Psycho. So anything prior to that is like, oh, no, it wasn't horror. Psycho was horror. But I really enjoy Rear Window for like the slow burn of it and the creeping horror, the creeping suspense of it. And just everything else involved was just so beautiful. The art direction was beautiful.
It's
Hitchcock, yeah. Grace Kelly's dresses, and it's Grace Kelly, of course, she's beautiful. So everything, and I just have a fondness for Jimmy Stewart anyway. So he's my Turner Classic Movies crush. So that's why Rear Window gets to be in my top 10. What is your top 10?
Number 10 is for me. I'm going with a very classic And maybe, you know, for someone who's an art student, it's going to be like, whoa, like that's obvious that was on your list. It's Suspiria by Dario Argento.
I was thinking that's where you're going. We don't actually know the rating. We might know what's in each other's top 10 lists, but we don't know the rating. So when you were talking about art student.
Yes. So this one, I think purely because when I first saw it, I was completely blown away by the visuals and the soundtrack. I had never seen that amount of style in any movie. I don't think, but definitely not in a horror movie. So it really had a pretty profound impact on me. And I mean, just the opening scene, the main character kind of like walking through the rain to the Goblin soundtrack. It was just like, I was just like, this is it. This is the movie.
This is why I'm an art student.
This is why I'm an art student. All right, number 9.
You tell me your number 9
Oh,
first.
so we're gonna do sort of like a
flip-flop.
little zigzag
Flip-flop.
kind of. Okay, my number 9 is another horror classic, and it is something I spy with my little eye, a sweater that someone might be wearing. So it's Nightmare on Elm Street.
Leprechaun. Just kidding.
Leprechaun. 1984, Wes Craven.
I'm sorry. It's
No,
Nightmare on Elm
it's
Street.
not Leprechaun. No, it's not Leprechaun. It's Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger. Saw this movie probably when I was a teenager. I would say I saw it pretty early. Maybe like when I was 10 or 11. But I didn't actually watch the movie until I was maybe 18. And I would say that like I didn't actually watch the movie because there's so many movies in my childhood where I'd seen bits and pieces of it, or it was on because an older cousin or an aunt or, you know, my parents,
those older cousins,
or is on TV or something like that. And I'd seen him just like, what is this? Yeah. But I think I have an earlier memory of actually Friday the 13th having that experience where I came into the movie and then immediately saw like someone's head getting hacked off with an axe.
So why is Nightmare on Elm Street?
So Nightmare on Elm Street, when I first saw that, I'd already known who Freddy Krueger was. I think the first Freddy movie that I saw was Freddy's Dead, and I think that was around the time when it was actually out in theaters, and it was 3D, and it was like really kind of funny and campy. But later, when I was a mature teenager, I actually watched the movie, and I was just so blown away by the effects, the scene. So, you know, it's no spoilers.
Yeah. It's okay. Everyone watching and listening has
the
probably
dream
seen
sequence in the
this.
bed.
Yeah.
She's on the bed and she's getting like tossed around the room, and like I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just so
right, and
supernatural.
she's being ripped apart by like an invisible force, right? That her
she's
boyfriend cannot see.
Yeah.
So basically, in a nutshell, number 9 is
Friday the 13th. Friday the no Nightmare on Elm Street. The first one.
We've gone from Leprechaun to saying it was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, number 9.
Freddy Krueger. I think everybody loves them some Freddy.
Everybody loves Freddy.
Freddy's just become a household, cuddly.
I think Freddy was my favorite Halloween costume that I ever had.
It was a pretty good one.
Thank you. I really enjoyed my Freddy costume.
Yes.
All right. My number 9 is 1991's Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
And we made mention of it, right? Yeah. That it was the Q Lazarus Goodbye Horses song that was our first dance at our wedding. And so part of that might be why it's in my top 10, because I have fond memories of, that movie in general. But also it was the first horror film to win an Oscar for Best Picture. That's huge. And rightfully so. It was one of those films that really was from beginning to end perfect. And both of the quote unquote villains in the movie, you have, Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill. And I would argue that maybe Hannibal's not quite so much of a villain. That's arguable. But both of those villains are very captivating in their own way. I don't think I really started to appreciate Buffalo Bill's villainousness until later on. But he has just this deep, kind of unsettling voice that he has. And he's just very captivating. And that scene that he has with that dance to Goodbye Horses is just so eerie and entrancing. And his words that he uses as he's looking in the mirror as the song starts to play, and his poor victim in the basement is like screaming for help, and he's just like nonchalant, like, I'm just gonna do my thing, I know you're screaming. Anyway, that movie is perfect. I can go on and on about it. It rivals Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan's relationship for romance between, with Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter. And so anyway, it's great movie.
Tom Arnold and Meg.
No, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan's relationship in Sleepless in Seattle is comparable to Hannibal and Clarice's relationship.
I'm wondering if Tom Arnold has been in a horror movie.
I'm sure he has. That guy's great too. I like him.
The Flintstones was pretty horrible.
How dare you? He was amazing in True Lies. Let's move on. I'm going to move on with my number 8. My number 8 horror film is Blair Witch Project from 1999. And this one came out when I was in high school. I had just started high school. And I heard murmurs about it when I was in high school from peers. I had not seen it yet, but everyone was talking about this movie that might have been real. Like, they found footage of these 3 hikers that went missing by mysterious means, and there were almost 3 waves of people that saw that film. There was the first wave who all saw it kind of not knowing what to expect and not knowing whether or not it was real or not. And then there was the second wave of people who knew it wasn't real and they wanted to be naysayers and like, oh, this movie sucks. And then the third wave, and that's the wave that I fell in, that knew both sides and went into it with like open eyes or an open mind. And I really enjoyed it for just kind of being able to create that conversation and having the ability to fool anyone of its authenticity or not was amazing to me. And just the simplicity of it and how terrifying it could be and how simple with very modest means. It was quite a feat, quite amazing to me.
I'm going to stay a little quiet on the subject because that might show up on my list somewhere. but yeah, definitely 1999, and it spawned an entire subgenre of horror movies.
Right, the mockumentary found footage kind of horror. Yeah,
and a lot of actually really good found footage horror movies came out of that. That almost like, I mean, I wouldn't say that
Activity.
Yeah, Paranormal Activity. Wreck.
Wreck was a good one. Yeah.
A lot of bad ones too. But anyways, okay. So what are we on? Number 7. My number 7 is John Carpenter's Halloween. And this was one that I think it's one of those movies that, the more I watch it, the higher it gets on my list. And it's, I mean, John Carpenter, I think for a lot of horror fans, definitely for me is one of, I'm going to say he's my favorite director in the horror genre.
Aww, that's why we're married.
But, for a lot of reasons, the cinematography, the soundtracks are always just on point. Michael Myers being such an iconic
Silent Stalker.
The Silent Stalker. Halloween is sort of, it's not the first of the slasher genre, but it's the first movie that kind of popularized the slasher genre.
Oh my gosh, there are a whole slew of slashers right afterwards.
Yeah.
And I'll stay quiet on that subject too, because it might be in my list later on.
Yeah, Halloween. I mean, I think for those who are fans of horror, it's like, what more can be said about this movie? It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 7 is Jaws from 1975. And it's kind of in that monster horror genre, subgenre, creature feature.
Blockbuster.
Yeah.
The ultimate blockbuster is the ultimate horror movie.
Wait, are you saying the ultimate blockbuster is
When I think
horror?
of blockbusters, I think of Jaws.
Oh, right. Okay. And it's funny because Tony had actually not seen Jaws for the longest time until I forced him to watch it by buying him like some sort of anniversary.
It's one of those movies where I've
edition.
seen parts of it.
Oh,
here
everybody
and there.
has seen parts. Yeah.
But I was, in my defense, I was proud of these certain holdouts that I had. Like I had not seen.
He
The
wanted to be that
Godfather.
guy that had never seen Jaws or The Godfather.
Yeah, I
E.T..
just held out for as long as I possibly could.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you are no longer that guy.
Yeah.
But I just I think Steven Spielberg is amazing at creating these I don't know, kind of iconic blockbuster hits, and they're almost like family movies. They're family horror movies. Like I remember watching Jaws with my family when I was probably like 8, and I was just riveted by the 3 men on the boat and just how different each of those men were, their characters. And Roy Scheider was like my favorite actor when I was in elementary school. I loved him. Then he was in Sequest.
Sequest.
Which, I think I just really liked it because he was in it, honestly. And Jonathan Brandis, he was nice too. But yeah, Jaws just was that beginning scene where Chrissy is swimming out to that buoy, and when she first gets pulled under and she has that kind of like that like choking, gasping moment of initial fear, and you feel it, and every time I watch it I feel that initial fear that she feels, and that's one of the most perfect scenes of emoting fear that I've ever seen in a movie.
And I think it's come up pretty commonly that Jaws is the scariest movie of all time.
Has it?
At least according to lists
Lists.
like VH1.
Someone else's list.
Like VH1's top scariest horror movies
Yeah.
of all time. I'm pretty sure
Popular
Jaws
video.
is on
Yeah.
top. But actually, I would say that I was afraid of sharks and Jaws without even seeing the movie.
Right.
That's how big of a phenomenon it
Right,
was.
I was afraid to go in a swimming pool because of Jaws. I was 8, okay? So it was not unfounded.
I forgot what number are we on.
Oh,
we
we're on number 6. It's my turn.
Okay, 6.
My
Wait,
turn
I feel
again.
like you went twice
No,
in a row.
we're flip-flopping.
I feel like you've gone like 3 times in a row.
No. Did you already do your number 7?
Yes.
See, so it's
Okay.
my turn again.
All right. Number 6.
It's a weird order that we devised.
We'll be able to watch the video afterwards
Yeah.
and see who,
Yeah, anyway.
settle this debate.
My number 6 is 1979's Alien.
Nice.
Thank you. I love Alien. Another one of those, I guess it's not a family horror film. I was actually terrified when I saw the trailer for this. When I was seeing some other movie, I saw the trailer for Alien in the movie theater, and no, not for this one because I wasn't born. Okay, I saw the trailer for like Aliens or something.
Probably Aliens 3.
Probably so. Anyway,
Yeah.
so Alien though I think is quite perfect, and I love Ripley as a character, as the primary character hero in this film. And I mean, I'm not sure at that time how many females were in this position of being that strong female character that didn't fit into that typical female mold.
Mm.
And I think the role was actually slated to be played by a man, and you can almost see that, how like there's nothing stereotypically female in her character. She's just a person that happens to be a female. And aside from, there are some, I think, moments of perhaps being like, harassed due to her gender. But aside from that, there's, like she's just this really amazing human that is defeating aliens, or an alien.
Yep.
And that scene, of course, that iconic scene around the dinner table where they're all just yucking it up and having a grand old time. And then cute little baby alien pops out of someone's chest. It's the cutest, frightening little alien I've ever seen. Anyway, I like that movie.
I am also a big fan of that movie. It was very hard to not put that movie in my top 10. Some other things won out over it for other reasons, but that movie could easily be in my top 10, probably in my top 5, which is crazy to say that it didn't make the top 10, but it could easily be in my top 5. I don't know. Making top 10 lists is hard.
It's hard.
Yeah. So number 6 for me is Blair Witch Project, which we talked about. I am one of those who was, Aleece was talking about earlier, the 3 waves of Blair Witch. I had heard of it, and I was terrified to watch it because I thought it was real. I didn't see any of the sort of internet marketing because it came out in 1999, so it's really early internet AOL days, maybe slightly post AOL, but definitely early those
Chat
types
room.
of days where everybody has the internet.
Yep.
And they did a big marketing blitz to promote this movie, and it was insanely brilliant. For the longest time, I think it was the highest grossing movie for the amount that it was made. Like,
yeah, I could see that.
I think Paranormal Activity beat it out eventually, and I wonder if there's maybe another movie that's, I don't know. Anyways, I was in probably the second wave where I was actually in all 3 waves. I was the first wave where I was terrified, I didn't want to see it, and then the second wave where I was just like,
But you didn't see it in the first wave.
It's all hype.
Were you in that first
didn't see
wave?
it, no.
So you were in waves 2 and 3.
I was in wave 1. I didn't want to see it because I thought it was real, and then I rode into wave 2 where I was just like, no, this is hype. I don't care about this. This is dumb. And then I watched it by myself in the dark one night. I was in high school, and I was like absolutely blown away by it. And I think, it stuck with me, and I didn't watch it for like several years. I was just like, whoa, that was terrifying. That was like,
Never want to go camping again.
I'm not going to go outside
Not gonna
after watching that.
Stand in the dark corner of a basement.
And then later, thinking about that movie and just becoming almost like kind of obsessed with that movie, and watching after I've seen a bunch of horror movies, and why is this movie, it seems so simple when you think about it, but they did a lot of really great things. The story and the acting, I know that it does get kind of like shit on a lot.
I thought the acting was great.
But it's one of those movies that's
It's parodied
so much that it
because
almost
it's great.
becomes a
You
joke.
parody things that are great, I think. I mean, yeah, you might parody things that are bad, but I think for that, like, what's that phrase? Like, the
But
highest
that
form of
scene-
flattery is
Yeah.
mockery.
Yeah. That scene, the one that's parodied where she's holding the camera in her face and like, she's like crying into the
and
camera.
she's like,
That's actually not the best scene for me at all. I think the kind of build up and the mood that's set by the film is really great and just really smart. And of course, like, the ending, a lot of people probably have issues with it, but I thought everything about it was just like perfect.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get to go again. I know for sure I get to
You
go
do
to
get
number
again.
5.
I have a list that says so.
And I'm surprised that none of our numbers actually, well, I don't know if I'm surprised, but I was wondering if any of our numbers were going to line up. So like,
I was wondering too.
yeah.
There's
so
still
far,
time.
We've had, the only crossover we've had is Blair Witch Project so far.
No, we've had so far.
So far.
Okay, go ahead with your number.
Okay, my number 5 is going to be Evil Dead 2. And another movie that I saw probably, I think, late in high school. Of course, this was the movie that I saw in Aleece's DVD collection, and
Then he loved me.
yeah,
It was love at first sight of Evil Dead 2.
and I think it was because it was fresh in my mind, and I didn't know too many people who at that time, this was a long time ago. I think now maybe it's different, but I didn't know too many people who had seen or appreciated, let alone owned that movie.
Yeah. So I was quite a catch.
Yeah. I'd actually seen Army of Darkness before I saw Evil Dead 2.
Me too, actually. And I didn't realize that they were connected because
didn't
I
realize
saw
either.
Army of Darkness when I was in like elementary school at the theater or something.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And Evil Dead 2, I rented it from Blockbuster. Actually, no, sorry. I wasn't a Blockbuster guy. I was a Hollywood Video guy.
No. Okay.
So when I was in high school, I had a membership to Hollywood Video. I would go down to Hollywood Video and rent movies probably at least once a week, probably 2 or 3 videos a week.
Yeah,
basically spending my lunch money on movie rentals.
Tony and I have like a lot in common, but there are a few moments here and there where we kind of like diverge and split. And it's like, what? You were a Hollywood Video person? You were a Looney Tunes person?
Exactly. Thanks for mentioning the Looney Tunes
You're
thing, because
welcome.
actually
That will come up
that's
later.
probably one of the reasons why I love Evil Dead 2 is because it's so
could
over the
see
top.
that.
It's
I could
pretty
see
much a cartoon. It's
Yeah.
like it's a movie where it's like, oh, it doesn't necessarily have to be scary for it to be a good horror movie. It can be like, it cannot take itself seriously, and
Yeah.
there's some parts that were a little terrifying and maybe like some jump scares or
Yeah.
but overall it was a funny movie.
I saw it with my older cousins and some younger cousins, but it's always those older cousins that like to introduce you to
Yeah.
things. And I just remember all of us like laying on like one of those hide-a-beds that fold out of a couch, and we're just like laughing hysterically. Evil Dead 2. Number five. Number 5. So my number 5 top perfect horror film is The Descent from 2005.
It's a good
Oh my goodness, when I saw this movie, I was blown away at the makeup of the cast, and the setting, how they just go, subterranean, and they're just this 5 friends that are gonna go spelunking because one of them had a horrific moment happen to them, I think the year prior. And what I love about it is that it's 5 friends that happen to be all female, but the way that Danny Marshall directs it, it's not like, oh, a bunch of females going spelunking and, eat, pray, love. Nothing against eat, pray, love, but it I do really enjoy when you have characters in movies that almost seem like, blind casting, where like you wrote the character first and then you cast who fit that character best. And it happened to be 5 friends who happened to be female. Oh man, it's so good and so great in the visuals when I think it's Sarah that comes out of that bloody lake, and her face is, she's almost like Carrie-fied, where she's just covered from head to like snout in blood, like this little alligator coming out of the water. And like the roles have reversed. Now she's the underground dweller and you have to be afraid of her. It's a great movie, and I really enjoy the European ending. I think there was like an American ending that was shot, and I saw that one later and I was like, oh no, the European ending.
So what's the European ending?
The European ending is she doesn't get out. The American ending is they end with her getting out of the cave.
So the European ending is darker.
The European ending, she gets out of the cave, but then she comes to her senses and realizes that that was like the ether, of being like underground in a cave. You kind of start going delirious. And she didn't really get out, and she stayed down there the whole time. And that was terrifying. And I feel like that made more sense because that kind of harked on the dramatic irony of the previous statement saying that, oh, when you go underground and when you're in that cave, you might start to see things and things play tricks on you. So like, what was imagined? What was just the own horrors of their own imagination? Anyway, I love that movie. 2005.
2005.
Mm-hmm.
So far that's the most modern,
most current. Oh,
most current.
Interesting.
That was 16 years ago.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think there's also, reluctance to pick something that is really new. I would say that,
It's hard to pick something new because you're thinking, well, will this stand the test of time?
yeah, I can think of 5 at least movies in the last 3 or 4 years that I've seen that I've been completely blown away by, but I was reluctant to put those on the top 10, probably
Right.
for that reason. Like, oh, maybe I need to live with it a little more.
Yeah,
Maybe I need to
you
watch it a
want to
couple
sit
more
with
times.
it.
Yeah.
So because of the order of our list, I'm going to go next again for
Okay.
my number 4th slot. And I have an older one from 1982, John Carpenter's The Thing.
The Thing.
The
Yes.
Thing.
The
So
Thing.
good. Another one of those great relationship movies where you have, I don't know how many people, like 6 people that happen to be dudes. But the different relationships that you see, and just like that scene where I think 3 of them are tied up on a bench because they're not sure one of them might be the thing, and they're trying to go through this whole process of like ruling people out, and one of them is the thing or has been infected by the thing, and the horror on the other two's faces when they're like, crud. I'm sure they thought more than crud, but yeah, they can't go anywhere because they're tied to their person who they thought was their friend or coworker.
I think that was the line. Actually, that was the exact line. It was like, "Oh crud! I'm
was
the
the
thing."
Yeah.
That is a solid choice.
Thank you.
So I'm at number 4.
Oh yeah, I think I skipped you.
I think our order is just
order's
kind of
terrible.
We had this
No,
plan
you
to go
just
kind of
go.
like a zigzag, but maybe it would have just been easier to go back and forth. But we're
It
just
was
so
a
excited
better
about this list.
idea in retrospect.
It's all right. We'll get through it. And
Yeah.
And then we'll review the footage later to see who was right, and then we'll have that conversation later. And just all right. My number 4 is a movie from 2002, directed by Danny Boyle, and it's 28 Days Later. This movie I saw in probably 2003. I didn't see it in the theaters. I saw it after it came out on DVD or video. Saw it in college, and for me it was really that sort of first college horror type movie where I'm like, oh, this is intellectual for me. Like, I'm thinking about horror movies in a different way.
Right.
It's like zombies are fast now. And maybe my brain is faster now for watching this movie. No, but I really thought it was just a mind-blowing movie. Changes the zombie genre completely. Although they claim to be infected and not undead.
Not right.
And anyways, all arguments aside, one of the other reasons why I chose 28 Days Later, because I know that this is the first movie where I watched the director's commentary, all of the behind the scenes footage. And that could have been because, like, at this time when DVDs were coming out, all this bonus footage was
Right. The
coming out.
commentary was often a big thing. Yeah.
Reading about it on the internet and, really trying to get down.
Because you watch it and you're like, I want more of that one.
Yeah. You wake up from a coma, or he was in a coma, right?
He was in a coma.
Wake up from a coma, and your whole world has changed.
Yeah.
And I guess, in some ways it's kind of like the college experience. Like, you go off to school and you wake up one day,
Wow.
your entire
Everyone
world
is
has changed.
dead.
Everyone is dead.
Metaphorically.
Well, you feel like you're alone in this world. Trying to find other survivors, people who you can traverse this world with.
Because the you that you used to know in high school is likely dead. And now you are formed and reborn as this. I'm really stretching.
But, Danny Boyle just, oh man, he hit the nail on the head with 28 Days Later.
Yeah, I don't know. It was okay.
It was all right. It was...
Moving on to my number 3 slot. A little known film made in 2002 by a director named Danny Boyle.
What?
It's
Oh, wait, number 3 or
28
number 4?
Number 3. My number 3.
Oh, okay. I thought
which
we were going to
means-
have one that crossed over.
No,
But...
I actually liked this one more than you,
Oh, okay.
apparently. So, who's the super fan now? But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed 28 Days Later for all the things that you said. And the soundtrack was, again, really great. I've always really loved John Carpenter soundtracks, but this was one where I started to really notice this soundtrack as well. And
This is the soundtrack that we still listen to
Yeah.
on car rides to this day.
Yeah, I have a spooky mix in this. The one, oh man, who is the artist who composed those really amazing songs where they get to the house and it's just like that slow.
You weren't supposed to put me on the spot this early in the podcast.
Oh man,
John Murphy.
Yes.
Oh, see, sometimes
You
it comes.
got it.
I didn't have to Google it or anything.
No, he didn't. If you were watching on YouTube, you can tell that he did
Yeah.
not Google.
I used my brain Google for that
Use
one.
The brain Google. So yeah, 28 Days Later is my number 3 slot.
28 days later. I still, every once in a while, just think in my head, hello.
Hello. I think I was saying hello when we were testing the sound levels. That's my sound.
That's our
level.
Yeah, that's our sound check. Is just the hello.
Tony's number 3.
My number 3 is going to be a little bit of a shocker, I think.
Is it Shocker?
No, it's Shocker. Shocker. I think I don't know if I've seen it, but I own it.
We own
It's one of
Shocker.
those. We own it. I don't know if I've seen it.
We've seen it.
And I think it was directed by Wes Craven, but I can't remember. Either one of the 2 movies that's in that double pack that we bought. It
Came with Shocker and Virus, starring Jamie Lee Curtis.
I think Shocker is directed by Wes Craven,
I
and
don't
Virus
know.
is or one of the 2.
Anyway, Shocker's not his
That
number
was
3.
a shocker. That was yeah. I went with a movie that I can watch every day of my life and still be entertained by it, and I quote it all the time. I think about it all the time, and I really just want to have. She knows what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be in. If there was a world of horror movie that I could live in, this would be the one that I would live in.
Mm.
And it is The Lost Boys, 1987.
Yes. Michael.
I think I'm a big fan of just, or I shouldn't say a fan. I'm a sucker for nostalgia. And that movie was shot on Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, and I grew up in the Bay Area, not too far from Santa Cruz, and that's kind of where my family would go. On a weekend, we go down to the beach, down to the boardwalk. Like the style was a big thing for me. The sort of Goonies-esque plot to save the day.
Yeah, it was kind of like a graduated Goonies.
Yeah, it was my Goonies. It was the one, where I was just like, I feel like a frog brother.
Yeah. Were you Edgar or Alan?
I was probably more of an Alan.
I actually can't tell the difference.
Edgar is Corey Feldman, and Alan is the other guy.
Well, see, you are a fan. Good job.
Unless I'm wrong.
Well.
Oh, and it has one of the best saxophone solos of all time ever filmed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That was a great saxophone solo.
Yep.
All right, moving on to number 2.
Number 2. Ooh, do I get to do number 2?
You get to go number 2 first.
All right, mine number 2 is a movie that I like more than you like. Something that you've mentioned. And it's, can you guess what it is?
The Blair Witch Project.
No, I already
wait,
mentioned that.
dang it. I keep forgetting. I don't know.
It's John Carpenter's The Thing is my number 2. And this is something that when I was looking at other people's lists, it was like top 5 on so many people's lists was The Thing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies where it's like, it is really, it has everything that you need. It has the suspense. It has the gore. It has the special effects, which are like, it's some of the most mind-blowing practical effects ever.
Yeah.
And always the movie that I'm like, CGI sucks. Look at The Thing. They made this big crazy monster out of all practical effects, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
The
The
acting,
setting, the location.
yeah, the setting. I mean, you're
How
on Earth, but you're
isolating
on
does
another
that
planet.
feel?
You're
Yeah.
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 It's
a good one.
It's really just one of those movies. It's perfect.
Agreed.
Yep.
Well, my number 2, and you have not mentioned this one, and I'm kind of surprised. Shaun of the Dead is my number 2. It is one of those for me where I could watch this every other month, not get sick of it. I watched it in Spanish because I know it so well, and so I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'm trying to learn it a little bit better. And so I thought, I know Shaun of the Dead's script like by heart. So when I hear it in Spanish, I'll be like, oh, that's what that means. And it's still funny, still good.
I think I chose to keep it off the list. It probably is like one of my top 10 movies of all time.
But not in your top 10.
Well, it really is in there, but I don't know. For
like
some
5.5.
reason, when I'm just going through the list, I'm like, I got to put this. I got to put this.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to
Shaun of the
whittle.
Dead is definitely, it should be in my top 10.
But the reason why Shaun of the Dead is like in my top 2 is because it is a horror comedy, and I feel like often horror comedies don't get acknowledged as being great films because like, it's a goofy thing, they're doing a parody of Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Living Dead and all those other movies. I think it's a drama, it's a romance, it's a horror, because it is truly terrifying, especially at the end when David gets torn apart. And oh my goodness. And it is funny. It's just so well orchestrated that I can't imagine any other film being able to bring all of those genres into one thing and pulling it off without seeming cheesy. It's flawless.
As you're saying your number 2, I have come to the realization that I don't think I ever said what my number 8 was.
Oh no.
I think we skipped it. Do you remember what my number 8 was?
Well, poo. We'll have to maybe put that in post. Let's keep going.
Maybe I can just quickly say what number 8 was, just in case I missed it.
All right, just throw it
If
in
for
there.
some reason
What is it?
we did number 8 already, then I just like this movie so much that I have to mention it twice. Maybe it shouldn't be number 8. Maybe it should be number 1.
Let's plug it. What is it?
Number 8, Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, you did not mention that.
Skipped it.
Well, therein lies the fault in our
system of trying to go in this
organization.
zigzag.
The reason why we
and
had
kind of
that
went around
was
in a
because I
circle.
didn't want like one of us to be saying our top number of that category first. I was trying to like be fair. I'm a Libra, so I just really wanted things to be fair, and in that fairness, we got confused. So
We did get a little. It's our first podcast, so we'll get this
pilot,
tightened up
guys.
as we go along. But just quickly, number 8, Night of the Living Dead, George Romero. I am a huge George Romero fan. Night of the Living Dead is one of the best movies ever made. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Can I go to number 1?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going from number 8 to number 1. My number 1 all-time horror movie. This was the easiest decision for me out of the entire top 10 list. And do you know what it is?
No.
You don't?
Hackers?
No, that might be my number 2 movie of all time. That's not horror at all. Some people...
I'm at a blank. Just,
Okay.
What is it?
I was trying to draw out the suspense. What is the number 1?
Well, oh gosh, I don't know.
Number 1 has to do with a director that I just mentioned. And
John Carpenter?
Nope.
George. Dawn of the Dead.
My number 1 horror movie of all time is George Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
I guessed it.
1978. Yeah, but you were supposed to just say like, yeah, I know it, and then I was supposed to say.
You baited me.
I baited. Yeah, I did. Well. So yes. So my favorite horror movie of all time is George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and for a lot of reasons. One, I love the zombie genre. I love what it represents. I like how it's something that as a single unit, a zombie is not the scariest
ant.
thing. They're kind of slow,
Yeah.
lurching, but it is also like a representation of us and of people. It's something that's very relatable because it's a person that has then died and come back to life.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was in 6th grade and it came on late at night, and it was a scene where there was a zombie getting pied in the face, and I was watching it and I was just like, what the hell is this? This is some I didn't even know like what to think of it. And then years passed and I never knew what the movie was called. And then when I saw it, I would say I was a teenager, probably at 18. I think that's when I was exposed to a lot of horror movies. And it just, I don't know, everything about it kind of resonated with me. The fact that the zombies were totally stylized, but I don't know like why Ramiro chose to make these zombies like a powder blue.
Yeah.
The fact that they were in an abandoned mall really spoke to me, especially.
I think we all think like, okay, in the apocalypse, when we go to a mall,
Yeah.
what has everything you need? A mall.
Well, I think that one of the things that I'm drawn to in a movie is the ability for the characters in the movie to kind of just like figure it out. And it's like a group of characters and they're like, we need to escape this evil. So it's like a very practical movie. And I think I liked thinking about it in that way, in that like, yeah, mall has everything you need. Everything about it was amazing to me, and it is my favorite horror movie. I will watch that movie every day of my life if I had to.
Good. Okay. Well, my number one is one that you've mentioned, and it was lower on your list, and that's fine. I'm glad that it did make it on your list. But it is 1978's Halloween, directed by John Carpenter, and John Carpenter is I think he's just my favorite director, period. I love the simplicity of everything that he chooses. And I think I listened to him in an interview, and he kind of is always of the philosophy when making films that the simpler, the better. Simple is key. And you can tell that in his score. It's such a simple score that's haunting and just dee, 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 dee. I think that was my phone ring for the longest time because I loved it so much. And yes, every time someone called me, I'd be terrified. And Michael Myers as this silent stalker that is just watching and waiting, and almost like in a zombie kind of fashion. He's not gonna run after you. He's just gonna wait for you to be unassuming and unsuspecting, and he'll get you. And the whole concept of, is he the boogeyman? And there are just so many moments where I'm just like, yes, truly terrifying. And a lot of it is that soundtrack when Jamie Lee Curtis thinks everything's over. She already got stabbed in the shoulder. She tells Tommy to go run to the next door neighbors or something. And then the kids leave and you hear that dun dun. And it's just so simple and terrifying. I love Halloween so much. I can watch that. Not every day. I wouldn't want to overdo it. But, once a month I could do that. I could do that. All right. That was it. Oh my gosh. And because making a top 10 list of our favorite horror films is so hard, rapid fire, honorable mentions for me: Candyman, Scream, Night of the Living Dead, Slumber Party Massacre, and Night of the Hunter. I just wanted...
Ooh, that's good.
Thank you.
Night of the Hunter. I don't think I've seen.
Ooh, it's a good one. Robert Mitchum. He is the ultimate creepy, slow burn of a villain.
Rapid fire, my 5 honorable mentions. The Dawn of the Dead remake by Zack Snyder. Shaun of the Dead is on there. Alien, The Mist, and Ringu.
Okay. And those were our top horror movie, or some of our top
It's
horror
funny
movies.
At the beginning of this, I was
when you're
this will be quick,
30 minutes. And it's like,
I think it's been an hour and 20 minutes.
Couple of windbags.
Might be an hour and 30 minutes.
Sorry, guys.
We should probably wrap this up.
All right. So what to expect for next time?
Yes. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of talk about the movies the horror movie that we first saw. So basically our first foray into,
for the genre.
I wouldn't even say incited the love, but maybe for you, maybe piqued your interest. But for me, it was like, this is my first exposure to something that was a movie that was scary.
Yeah. So next week, are we doing your first foray into horror?
So we are going to do, I'm not sure yet.
Okay, so we'll do one of our first forays into horror next week. Or should we say what it's going to be?
I almost feel like we shouldn't say what it's going to be, because it's, in the podcast format, it's usually in the title of the podcast.
Right. So check it out next time, guys.
Check it out next time. And
thank you for watching this much or listening
our pilot
this
episode
long.
of Gutted.
Gutted.
And if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and comment in the comment section. Yeah. We'll try to put our list and some tidbits and all that kind of stuff. If you're
watching on YouTube, put your top 10, because it's so hard and so fun to do. So please tell us what your top 10 horror movies are.
Yes, we want to engage in a long, lengthy battle of who is right and who is...
Or who is more like-minded.
Who is more like-minded, exactly.
Or Tony.
Or if we have any listeners.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this in audio version, then feel free to just look out for the next episode and follow us and download our episodes. And we will try to put these out once a week.
Yep. And that's about it. Thank you for letting us spill all of our guts on Gutted.